Studio Stew. We're here talking about the stuff. I'm Matt.
I'm Jen.
Jen's Jen. We're going to start talking. Jen, what are we talking about today?
Well,
Or
Matt, I thought that maybe you could share some of your personal experience today with us on your Final Cut Pro journey.
Mhm.
And I think that it'll be something that a lot of people will be able to relate to and hopefully have a little bit of encouragement from.
Sounds great. So when I think about it, um, my main squeeze is music and audio editing, or DAWs, digital audio workstations. And on a Mac, they have GarageBand, and then they have Logic, which is the for-pay big brother of GarageBand. Well, Final Cut Pro is essentially the same thing, only with iMovie. So if you know a little bit about iMovie, you know a little about Final Cut Pro. And that's kind of why I decided to go that route. Now, admittedly, Jen knows I have a storied past and off relationship with Final Cut Pro. Like every program, it has its quirks. Um, but I had to step back and realize that, it's a big beast in a professional program, and there's classes for it, which we offer, which we can always link in our description through lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning. Yes, down below in the description. Doesn't make you feel like a real YouTuber when you say that, like a podcaster. But I had started playing with it, and I was getting some results, and they were looking okay. But the reality of the situation is it was a professional program, and I needed some training to get what I wanted to get out of it. So we have few things written down here, and I'm going to go with it with skill acquisition, tying it all together in that I had made some videos with iMovie, and those little skills, whether I knew it or not, was actually building up to where I am now. No, by no means an expert, but definitely helped me along the way. And we talk about workflow and like timelines in our past episode. And when it comes to video editing, I mean, just the sorting alone for the few clips that I have was a task. Was took time, took an hour or so. But luckily, I had some skills under my belt that helped me get to that level, if that makes sense. So when we always talk about skill acquisition and the fundamentals and all the things we've harped on, I feel like my journey with this program is just a perfect example, and really a testament. While we sit here talking about it and telling you guys to do it, it's kind of awesome to see it come to fruition. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Should I talk about highs and lows?
Well, I just want to make one comment
Yeah.
to what you just said, is that I think that a lot of these more advanced professional programs can seem very daunting at first. And then when you see somebody who uses it, who's comfortable with it, who's like an expert at using that program, it can almost seem like, like they had some kind of magic power that they're tapping into, that they're doing all this wizardry that's just like hard to wrap your mind around. But keep in mind that like it really is just a sum of like little skill after little skill after little skill. If you've ever worked with somebody who's never used a computer before, they're just like in awe that you're moving your mouse around and clicking on it, and you don't even think of that as being a skill anymore when you use a computer on a daily basis. So think of your skill acquisition on these more advanced programs as not being like something that's just out of your reach, that's so complex because it's something that pros use. Pros get good at using it because they use it every day. So it's just little skill after little skill that will build upon itself. Just temper your expectations that you're not going to necessarily be able to go full steam right out the gate.
Mm-hmm. What we talk about, and I swear we talk about it in another episode, it's not that it is difficult, it is that it is detailed. So, doing things by hand, masking things in Photoshop, selecting things very detailed and adjusting the parameters. There's some difficulty, don't get me wrong, but mostly it's just very detailed. It's like a recipe, and instead of 10, there's 10 subset A, and then you go down a rabbit hole to make that work. Often like painting, where you do base layers that build up into this final detailed project, if that's a good example at all. That's really what it is. You're building foundations to then get final products out of. I'm going to talk about, which you've seen, our baby beluga here. I made a video for our children's portion of our YouTube here at the St. Joe County Public Library. And I'm going to open the file with all the little bells and whistles and the timeline where you can see what I did. And I'm just going to talk about some of the things I did. Would you do it that way? Who knows? But I will show you what I did. But thank you, Jen. Yeah, I love to think about it like that, though. It's a summation of everything. And what I want to talk about, I wrote up there, the end result versus the final project ties into what you said in that if you have a project to do and you go for it, which we very much encourage, the only thing that I'm wary of really is it's your one true project. And if you're using that to learn the program, you may end up with a product that you didn't see in your head, and that could be disheartening. So I'm very happy that I have lost projects, started projects over, done projects for other people, made up something goofy just to practice, because all of those things led me to be able to visualize and complete a bigger, project. It's just one of those things where you go to set out to make your magnum opus and you're still learning the program. That's great, but you can't let that end result get you down in the end. So that's kind of how I feel about it. My highs and lows, there were many, because you learn something new every day, and that's what's beautiful about it. But really, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I love making things. A little element of silliness always makes it fun. But really, the lows or the difficulties I had was workflow and understanding how a tool worked. I couldn't really get too mad at things when I was using them wrong, or there was a better tool to complete the job. And that's where the training and the classes and all that really helped. Dragging and dropping in assets and then expecting them to, function a certain way when the program has, maybe 5 or 6 different ways to add the assets, which could sound technical, but having that foundation helped me understand why it wasn't working. So my frustrations were actually not valid because the computer and the program was just doing its job as I told it to. When you learn how to tell it what you want to do, worlds open up. And I'll admit, any day, the classes for Final Cut Pro or any video editing software start with how to get your files into the program. But knowing that made saving my project, not losing work, making my time efficient, so it was so much easier. Blessings upon blessings by learning that stuff. So it does redeem itself and bear fruit, as they say. But I would encourage all of you to jump in, head first, but have a more silly or a more fun or a lighthearted project. Not something that's worth 100% of your grade for a class or something like that, as they would say. That's half of a joke. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. Personally, when I start, working in a new program, I'm more the type of person who, if you give me a box with instructions, I'll probably try to put it together first before reading the instructions and mess it up and get to a point where I'm like, oh, I really should read the instructions before I destroy this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go back and I'll read the instructions. But I almost need that time to kind of mess things up and play with things before I start coming up with the questions in my head to look at the instructions to find the answers for. And I know that's not how everybody operates. Like some people like to read the instructions thoroughly first, have a clear clear picture of where they're going from point A to point B before they even start, which can be kind of difficult sometimes when you're working in a complex program that has a lot of little skills that build up. So if you are the type of person who likes to like have the overall picture and feel like you already have a certain level of proficiency before you even get started, I would say start your project very small then. If you want to have that mindset so that you can really focus on, you know, maybe one skill at a time instead of like putting, planning a 2-hour movie, maybe just start with like a 2-minute clip.
Mm-hmm. The irony of that, too, is on a different video, which will remain nameless, I was learning as I went. So as the video goes, my animation gets smoother and my transitions look more professional because I literally started out by dragging, dropping, just forcing it, making it go. I was even using Photoshop to animate the things I wanted to animate, which was its own thing. Honestly, I loved it. It just, Photoshop could not handle what I wanted it to do. So that's another example, expecting something that's not designed to do something to do something. So, yes. But all in all, really going back, if you've watched any of our other stews, these things have added up to a proficiency that I'm very comfortable with. And in going forward with the classes and learning anything new, it's given me another level of comfort. And I work in here, and you personally encourage me to learn, and you learn yourself all the time. And I find that, kind of talking about highs and lows again, like, my lows aren't failures or catastrophic as they could be or used to be. Rather, where it's wrong, it's a failure. It really isn't. I gotta say, doing these and working in Studio 304 and then working on projects has really shown me that, like, I know that didn't work. So an example would be my green screening. I know now that no matter what, you can't have enough light if you want it to, look right. You got to be well lit. And, I really, really focused on that. And I learned that not only is the keying tool, which helps you green screen by selecting a color to take out by using masks. So a combination of masks and keying got the job done better than I've ever had it done. And how did I learn about masks? Well, Jen had a program and showed me masks. So voila. It's a magical thing when your mind is open to learn something new. Feel free to prompt me.
When you've gone through the process a few times too, when you've learned a new piece of software, I find the easier it gets, even though I'm getting older and my brain is getting mushier.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's easier to learn new programs, not because my brain is sharper and I'm getting smarter, but more because I just know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you can just be patient and get through that initial hump, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You really can.
Yes, I believe this wholeheartedly. Just to throw an example out there for fun, Photoshop, your assets, your photos have to come from somewhere, and they're saved somewhere. And where you do that, it's going to have an effect on it. Logic for audio. Well, the audio has to come from somewhere, and it has to get into audio, and it's stored somewhere. And guess what? Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro or any other video editing software, I'll talk like this, has to pull your footage from somewhere and has to sort it. And golly gee whiz, check it out. The knowledge I had from all the other things applies to all those other things. And just like saving it or exporting it or sharing it or any other word these goofy programs use, it's all about saving it or sending it somewhere and picking out the settings that you want it to be saved at. And it's kind of universal in a way. And while you may not be able to find it right away, you know what you're hunting for or what you're looking for or buzzwords or keywords or things to use. So, again, harping on the fundamentals and just going for it. Look where we are. Don't you just feel wonderful inside? Do you have anything else to add?
No, thanks for sharing your story, Matt.
thank you for having me on your Studio Stew, our Studio Stew, where we mix it up all the time. You can find us at sjcpl.org or libraryforlife.org. Our email is studio304@sjcpl.org, correct? Right. Jen keeps my brain going. We're getting old and mushy here. Our phone number, 574-282-4646. You can call us anytime. Tell us your ideas. Ask us a question. Talk about your project. We'd love to hear from you. So this is Matt signing out and
And Jen.
Jen signing out. We will see you next time on Studio Stew.